Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is slamming Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet picks, warning that they signal a continuation of Ottawa's anti-resource agenda. Smith is also calling on the new Environment Minister to reject misleading pipeline claims made by her predecessor, Stephen Guilbeault. While sharing the stage with Alberta Prosperity Project CEO Mitch Sylvester, Smith doubled down on her pledge to reject the status quo from Ottawa. The meeting between the two came the same day the project revealed its official referendum question. Meanwhile, the Alberta UCP is freezing Alberta's industrial carbon tax indefinitely amid growing uncertainty from tariff threats and investment instability. All that and more on this week's Alberta Roundup. I'm your host, Isaac Lamoureux. Let's hop into that first story now. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is warning that Prime Minister Mark Carney's newly unveiled cabinet signals a continuation of Ottawa's anti-resource agenda. She said that while she's been trying to give Carney the benefit of the doubt, one of his first actions as Prime Minister is a step in the wrong direction. Carney unveiled his 28-minister cabinet on Tuesday. Half of the ministers served in former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's inner circle. Also, because Carney forced gender parity in the cabinet, it consists of 14 men and 14 women.
Because it's 2015.
Smith has consistently pushed Ottawa to scrap policies including the oil and gas emissions cap, clean electricity rules, plastic bans, Bill C-69, and other federal environmental mandates. Following the most recent general election, Smith met with Carney and reiterated her demands, saying that he replied by saying he would rapidly advance national building projects. She said, quote, "Following this meeting, I gave the Prime Minister the benefit of the doubt. We wanted to see whether he would take decisive and meaningful action to repair the relationship between Alberta and Ottawa, or if this was just more hollow rhetoric that Albertans have become accustomed to." But with Carney's newly appointed cabinet, Alberta may be in for more hollow rhetoric after all. Smith raised her concerns with newly appointed Environment Minister Julie Dabrusin. Smith said, quote, "Not only is she a self-proclaimed architect of the designation of plastics as toxic, but she is a staunch advocate against oil sands expansion, a proponent of phasing out oil and gas, and for the last 4 years, she has served as the right hand to former Environment Minister and militant environmentalist Stephen Guilbeault." Over the last decade, Smith said that Alberta has suffered due to the anti-development and anti-resource policies pushed by the Liberal government. She said that Alberta is now forced to deal with another keep-it-in-the-ground Environment Minister. Smith said, quote, "This is a step in the wrong direction. I will continue to do everything in my power to negotiate a fair deal for Alberta with the new Prime Minister. Albertans will not stand for the status quo from Ottawa. If the Prime Minister is serious about resetting the relationship between Ottawa and Alberta, then we need meaningful action now, not more of the same. I call on the new Environment Minister to support Alberta's energy industry and work towards increasing production and market access for our resources." Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre issued a similar warning. He said that Canadians cannot afford more out-of-touch Liberal policies and spending that has resulted in young Canadians having no chance to buy homes and 2 million people lining up at food banks. While Carney has talked a big game about taking Canada in a new direction, Poilievre warned that talk is cheap, and lining his cabinet with the same ministers as former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not a good start. Poilievre took aim at various ministers, both new and old. Though he noted that Carney had borrowed several of his ideas during the leadership campaign and election, Poilievre dismissed it as water under the bridge. In fact, he encouraged Carney to take more. Take a listen on the advice Poilievre gave to Carney.
We also have an offer to make the Liberals. My message to Mr. Carney, steal my ideas. We've got great ideas. And we've been leading the charge on the debate over carbon taxes, inflation, housing prices, crime, drugs, resource development. And I note the Liberals even lifted a few of those ideas and put them in their platform to get re-elected. We want to make sure that they were sincere about that. And we're going to continue to put forward solid ideas to make people's lives better every day. Because our purpose is to bring home the promise of Canada, that everyone who works hard gets a great life, that anyone from anywhere can do anything, where you get a nice, affordable home on a safe street. every day and in every way, we will fight for our people and our country to put people back in charge of their lives with bigger paychecks, abundant, affordable energy, home ownership, low taxes, safe streets, and a strong military in the country that we know and love, Canada. Thank you.
For our next story, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is demanding that the new Liberal Environment Minister disavow misleading comments made by her colleague and predecessor, Canadian Culture Minister Steven Guilbeault. Smith has frequently clashed with Guilbeault in the past, who formerly held the role of Environment Minister. Smith previously labeled him as an ideologue, irritating, a national embarrassment, awful, dangerous, and more. Now, Smith is accusing Guilbeault of misleading Canadians once again. She said, quote, Canada's new Canadian Identity Minister, Steven Guilbeault, just deceived Canadians, saying we don't need more pipelines because the TMX pipeline is only 40% full and peak oil will be in 2 years. Yes, Guilbeault claimed that oil demand would peak in 2028-29 worldwide and in Canada. He also said there are no investors for oil and gas or support for an east-west pipeline. He added that pipelines are built by companies, not the government. However, despite these claims, the Trans Mountain expansion was initially set to be built by private investors. After facing regulatory hurdles, court challenges, and political opposition from the Trudeau government, the private investors backed out, and the federal government purchased the project for $4.5 billion. However, the project ultimately cost taxpayers $30.9 billion to fund. Smith said, quote, the facts are that TMX, which just opened and would have been built entirely with private dollars if Ottawa hadn't made it impossible for the original proponent to build it, is already close to capacity. She added that demand for bitumen is projected to grow for decades and it will be required to replace conventional U.S. oil fields. Despite her recent criticisms, which we just talked about, of the new Environment Minister, Smith also issued a request to her. She said, quote, this is just another example of how misleading and destructive this former Environment Minister was to Alberta's and Canada's economy and the investment climate. We ask for the new Environment Minister, Julie Dabrusin, to disavow his comments and commit to working with Alberta to build new pipelines to access new markets. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer blasted Guilbeault too. He said that Guilbeault lied about Trans Mountain's operating capacity and neglected to mention the billions of dollars lost in energy investment in Canada. Scheer said, quote, the Liberals attacked Canada's oil and gas industry for 10 years. Canadians don't want more of the same. For our next story, we'll cover some remarks made by Smith while she was sharing the stage with Alberta Prosperity Project CEO Mitch Sylvester. Smith said that Albertans aren't asking for special treatment, just freedom. She said, quote, I will not permit the status quo to continue. We are proud Canadians, but our loyalty must not be mistaken for submission. Alberta will stand strong and free. We will be the leaders we were born to be. We will work with the new federal government where possible, but never at the cost of our own prosperity or principles. This is Alberta's moment to stand up, speak out, and build a future that reflects the courage, ambition, and strength of our people. While Smith hasn't endorsed a referendum, Sylvester's Alberta Prosperity Project surpassed 240,000 signatures on Monday, well above the 177,000 that will be required once the UCP's newest legislation is passed. The meeting between Smith and Sylvester occurred on the same day the Alberta Prosperity Project revealed its separation referendum question. Smith said she disagreed with those opposed to a referendum question, arguing that the democratic process should be respected if the legal threshold is met. However, Smith reiterated her preference for Alberta to remain in Canada, saying she still sees a path forward for a strong and sovereign Alberta within Confederation. Smith said, quote, the federal policies have blocked pipelines, capped our industries, driven away hundreds of billions of dollars of investment, and these decisions have cost us jobs and opportunity and the future that we owe to our children and grandchildren. Ottawa's overreach, from carbon taxes to net zero mandates, has not only hurt Alberta, but it's weakened Canada's place in the world. Smith said Ottawa's attacks on Alberta go back further than the last decade of Liberal rule, citing Pierre Elliott Trudeau's policies. She said, quote, Pierre wanted to steal Alberta's wealth, while Justin wanted to destroy it. She also pointed to media hysteria over US President Donald Trump as an example of hypocrisy. Smith said, quote, "The media said Trump was an existential threat to Canada's economy, but Albertans feel the exact same way about Ottawa." As for Carney, Smith said there are two versions, one who worked as Bank of Canada governor under Stephen Harper, and another who became a green extremist following his departure. However, she said Canadians may be finally rejecting the green agenda in favor of economic development. She said Carney has 6 months to prove he's serious about changing direction. Smith said her government is also exploring the Alberta Bill of Rights as a way to shield law-abiding gun owners from Ottawa's firearm policies. She has put the issue to her Department of Justice to explore further and find out just how much she can do to shield Albertans from federal overreach. The Alberta Prosperity Project has officially unveiled the question it plans to put to voters if a citizen-initiated referendum on Alberta's independence proceeds. Constitutional lawyer and APP General Counsel Jeffrey Rath revealed the proposed referendum question on Monday. It is, do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? The APP says it has already gathered over 240,000 pre-registration signatures. While the legal threshold is technically still 600,000, the UCP's new legislation, Bill 54, would lower that number to 177,000 once passed through legislation. The group is continuing to push forward with that 600,000 number in mind, despite the fact that this will likely be lowered to 177,000 very shortly. In the meantime, APP has launched an educational campaign to promote its roadmap to sovereignty. The group proposes the creation of an Alberta pension plan, a provincial police force, and full provincial control over resource development, immigration, tax collection, and employment insurance. The project's website reads, quote, "These initiatives not only pave the way for sovereignty, but also reinforce Alberta's capacity to manage its affairs effectively. Once the project surpasses the required signature threshold, it plans to present the petition to Elections Alberta for approval and begin canvassing the signatures within the timeline, which is 90 days but will be extended to 120 days upon Bill 54's passage." For the last story today, we'll cover how Alberta is fighting back against the federal government's hidden tax. The Alberta government is freezing its industrial carbon tax at $95 per ton of emissions, citing rising tariffs from the ongoing economic war with the United States and growing uncertainty for investors. Premier Danielle Smith and Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz announced the decision Monday, halting a planned increase to $110 per ton in 2026 and a further rise to $170 per ton by 2030 under Alberta's Technology Innovation and Emissions Reduction Regulation. Smith said industry leaders told her that further increases to the carbon tax would be devastating to Alberta's competitiveness. She said, quote, "If industry told us that any increase past $100 per ton would be harmful, you can imagine what $170 per ton would do. That would be devastating to Alberta's economy." Alberta remains committed to reducing emissions through the development and implementation of new technologies, not unrealistically high taxes, while responsibly powering the world for decades to come. In fact, since 2007, Alberta has reduced emissions from oil sands operations by over 22%, while increasing oil production by 90%, and overall, emissions across the province are down 7.2%. Schultz said Alberta is being unfairly penalized under Ottawa's climate framework, despite the entire country only contributing 1.5% to global emissions. Schultz said, quote, "This is our jurisdiction, not Ottawa's, and if the federal government wants to work together to keep our economy strong, respect the Constitution, and do the right thing for the environment, they can follow the path forward that has been outlined by the Premier over the last couple of weeks." Schultz also cited a recent estimate that showed Canada at one point was paying 34% of the world's carbon taxes. The freeze is expected to support key sectors including oil and gas, agriculture, petrochemicals, forestry, mining, and more. Smith and Schultz said the freeze was necessary to protect tens of thousands of Alberta jobs and to prevent further economic instability caused by Ottawa's climate mandates and the ongoing US tariff war. That wraps up this week's show. My name's Isaac Lamoureux, your host of the Alberta Roundup. Have a great weekend. Thank you, and God bless.